So speak life, when the sun won't shine and you don't know why. Look into the eyes of the broken hearted, watch them come alive as soon as you speak hope, you speak love, you speak life.
Well, hi there and welcome to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. This is a show we do every week at this time. I know that even if you walk the Christian walk, if you're a believer, that doesn't automatically mean that things are going to be easy. Jesus never promised, if you follow me, things will be easy. No, he even told us it would be difficult. But it also is rewarding. Jesus offers promise, he offers hope, and he offers glory. What we have to do in the face of struggle, in the face of challenge, is understand that he is there for us. We can draw on his strength. Through this show, I want you to understand you're not alone. God's there with you, and other people around you are going through things. We have guests on this show who have dealt with difficult issues, but they found victory and they have found a deepened faith through the issues. We also have guests on here who are called to help other people. Today, we have a man with us who has the absolute coolest job in the world. Roger Schmidt is with me. Roger is the owner of Fusion Backline. Hi, Roger. How are you?
Just fine. How are you?
What we're going to attempt to do first is try to explain what backline is. Now, I'm a musician. I understand it, but there are a lot of people who go, backline? What happens when you tell somebody what you do and you say, I own a backline company, and they go,
they give me that dog look, and then they normally associate it with that I have a backhoe and maybe I dig septic systems or
right. Well, backline is, say, a musician or a band comes into town to play. They basically bring their guitars and drumsticks with them, and then you provide pretty much everything else, right?
That's correct. Most of these events they're flying in, so they can bring just a minimal amount of their own gear.
Yeah. Like what? What do you provide?
I provide the drum kits, the guitar amps, bass amps, keyboards, percussion, the congas, all that sort of thing. Sometimes they're guitars, all the accessories, all the things that the band themselves would need to play and do their performance.
Right. Now that sounds simple, kind of, until the band says, no, I want this kind of drum set, or I want this kind of amp. What kind of requests do you get?
It's very, very specific, and I spend a lot of time with drummers because they want the Gretsch kit that was built in 1963, and it has to have a certain size toms. It has to have certain heads on the drums. Very, very specific. The guitar players want the old tube amps. I get a lot of requests for Fender amps from the 60s. They want that vintage gear that will allow them to create the sound that they're accustomed to back home in their studio, and the gear that they play with at home. They want exactly what they have at home.
So what that means is you have to have all that.
Yes, yeah. The inventory has grown, I would say, out of control from the original business model.
I want to come play at your house. Man, so like you have how many drum sets maybe?
I believe I have 13 drum kits, and these are all very high end, very expensive. And I'm actually hunting today for a mid 60s Rogers drum kit to restore, to add to the collection.
Oh, so you restore them and then put? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I have fun doing that. That's the hobby part. That's really interesting.
Okay, and we're going to get into that because, simple question that I'm sure is a complicated answer. But how did you get into this?
A friend of mine was the event director for an event called Resurrection, which is the youth conference for the United Methodist Church, and they meet in Gatlinburg every January.
Right, been to it many times.
And I took my boys there when they were growing up in church as a chaperone. But he called me, and they needed a Hammond organ, a Hammond B3, for one of the bands that was coming in, and he knew that I had a very nice one because that's what I play.
Okay.
So
you're a keyboard man.
I'm a keyboard man. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Played Hammond organ all my life.
Awesome.
So he said, well, bring that up, and you might as well stay and work for us. So I loaded the Hammond up in a U-Haul trailer and the Leslie and all the accessories, took it up there, and ended up spending the whole weekend there working as an entry-level, just a stagehand, doing whatever needed to be
just
done.
carrying stuff.
Yeah, push this there and run this spotlight. And,
Yeah.
And then he expressed he was dissatisfied with the company that provided the rest of that gear, the guitar amps, and they were having trouble with the drum kit. And I said,
And that's usually a local company that will handle something like that. Okay.
Typically, yeah. And I said, well, I can do that. I've been in music all my life. And he said, well, you're going to need to buy these basic things. You're going to have to buy this brand of drum kit. You're going to have an Ampeg bass amp and a Yamaha keyboard and, this basic stuff to work your way into the business. So I took a loan out of my house and started hunting gear and started to buy things so that I could do this.
Okay.
And,
well, it helps having connections, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. So he was my first client, my first employer, and they do several events every year. Hearts on Fire for the Baptist youth. And,
okay. Well, but it probably helps to be a musician, but I know something else about you. You as a collector.
That's right.
You enjoy this.
Yeah.
And just happen to get paid for it, sounds like.
Yes. That's
guilty as charged.
That's the quick answer. Yeah.
So now, what I want to get into a little bit, I think that kind of explains this process of what you do. How long have you been doing this?
Since 2009 is when I got started with it.
Okay.
And really went full time in 2010.
So you have 13 drum sets, which that doesn't mean just a little closet. And I don't know how many, 50 cymbals maybe?
Yeah, and countless sets of the hardware and all the stands and snare drums, a room full of snare drums, because that's the other specific that the drummer wants.
Oh, sure.
I want a Ludwig, this size and this color and all that.
Musicians.
Yeah.
And green M&Ms to go with them, right?
That's right.
So then you go in the guitar amps and the bass amps, and so you've got tons of stuff.
About 85 guitar amps now.
Good grief! And a guard dog
Yeah.
to watch all of that. So the question that I want to get into, and I only know a little bit about this, is how did you get to Knoxville? Because you're not from here, right?
No. I grew up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And back in the late 70s, we had one of the worst winters that we had, and they're severe anyway. And I just decided that it was time to go south. Somewhere it's got to be warmer than it was.
You just left.
I just left, yeah. I sold all my stuff and bought a touring 10-speed bike and trained and got the appropriate gear to travel on a 10-speed and left Wisconsin in the fall.
On a bike?
On a 10-speed bike, yeah. With the intention of ending up in Florida because it's warm there.
Yes, it is.
And just
always
warm.
Yeah.
I didn't take a watch intentionally. The only key that I had was to the bike lock. No time frame, no plans, just a basic route of going south and east and ending up in Florida.
Okay. So this was in the route?
This was in the route. After I had come down through Kentucky, I at that time had an uncle that lived in Gatlinburg. So it sounded like fun, to come down, go through the Smokies, visit my uncle and his family, and then get on the Blue Ridge Parkway and go over to the coast and then travel south along the coast.
It's downhill from there.
Yeah, it's
literally.
all downhill, yeah. And when I came through Walland and Townsend, Tennessee, I met some local folks that said, "You need to take a break from your trip, and we have a cabin in the mountains, and we think you should stay there and take a break."
Okay.
And so that's what I did. But what I didn't know at the time was it was nearly Halloween, and the reason they wanted me to stay in the cabin was so that the locals wouldn't burn it down on Halloween.
Okay. They had an agenda.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
They did. And
So then,
well, that week or so turned into, I ended up renting the cabin. I thought, this is a wonderful place. I rented the cabin and lived in it for 9 months up in the mountains.
it's beautiful up there.
The running water was in a stream out back. It had an outhouse. It did have electricity.
Oh, so you roughed it. So
Yeah.
not only did you ride here on a bike, but then you lived in roughing its
Yeah.
conditions.
But it was
Okay.
wonderful.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
absolutely wonderful.
Talk about a left turn.
Yeah.
And so, and you've stayed here ever since.
Ever since, yeah, got established, got in a band right away.
Okay.
That family, they were the son had a band and started, got involved with the music scene here and just never left.
That's terrific. That's really, what a great story. We've established what you do, and it glamorous, I'm not sure cuts it, because it's just cool. It's just cool. But you're behind the scenes, and this show is called Dealing with Life, and we're going to go beyond that, because I know you have some stories to tell. Not everything is glamorous in the last recent years of what you've experienced, but you have kept your strength and you've kept your faith, if not made it stronger.
Absolutely.
And in just a minute, we're going to dive into that, and I want to hear your story, and I want people to hear your story, because to me it's fascinating, and it's also things that we can learn from, and that's really important. Roger Schmidt with us on Dealing with Life. We will talk in just a minute.
Just hold on to the promises. Hold on to the promises. Jesus is alive, so hold tight. Hold on to the promises. You are here, you're real. I know I can trust you. Even when it hurts, even when it's hard, even when it all just falls apart. You steady my heart. You steady my heart.
Whether by accident or on purpose, you have found a show called Dealing with Life. Glad to have you along for the ride. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. That's a book that is about life, about trust, and about worry through the eyes of a dog. My dog, Mango. And it's available, if you're interested, on onedogsfaith.com. And it's also available through Amazon and some local stores around here, including Long's Drug Store and Farragut Pharmacy. Great to have you along. On the other microphone in the studio here is Roger Schmidt. Roger is the owner of a business called Fusion Backline, and he provides musical instruments for all kinds of live events all around town, all around the area, and probably 3 or 4 states that are beyond us.
Yes. Yep.
Great to have you, and what an interesting story that you had to get into this business. But what I want to talk about now, since we're talking about dealing with life, is life dealt a difficult blow to you a couple of years ago. A tragic event in, what was it,
2011.
Tell us what happened.
My wife was on her way home from work and out on 321 coming. She worked at Oak Ridge Laboratories.
Okay.
Coming in 321 and lost control of her SUV and rolled it in the median and died there, which is something you can't plan for, you can't expect. It just happens.
Oh, I can't imagine the emotions and the difficulty. But that happened a day before something you guys had planned forever.
I go to Fairview United Methodist Church in Maryville, and we have been involved for years in a program with the youth choir. And my boys grew up in the youth choir, both of them. Once a year, they call it choir tour, and they plan out. It takes a year to plan. They pick a large city, and we transport the whole youth choir. We learn a lot of music, transport the whole youth choir to that city, and play in the Salvation Army facilities, homeless shelters. We play on the street.
You literally take it to the streets.
Take
You're
it to the
going to
street.
the inner city. Oh,
Absolute
wow.
inner city.
What a great choir tour.
And the music is geared toward the urban gospel type music, and it's a bunch of white kids up there swaying and doing their thing and doing it very well.
Yeah.
I play Hammond organ in the band, and one of my sons played guitar for years, and the other one sang in the choir.
Okay.
They bring along typically a youth pastor that gives a message. It's not just a performance; it's a worship service.
Wow.
To bring hope to these folks that need some hope.
And like how many performances through that week?
Sometimes it's 3 a day.
Oh, good grief.
And we roll all the sound system and all the gear.
So it's not a vacation. You guys are working it.
Work hard. Yeah.
Wow. And so this accident with your wife happened the day before this.
Yes, the evening before. We were to leave Saturday morning and head out with about 100 folks, 65 kids, 35 adults, buses and vehicles and this entourage that all makes this happen.
Yeah, and the scheduling for that
it's massive.
Yes.
Everybody has to plan their vacations around this, get time off from work. You got to figure out the logistics of housing 100 people, feeding them.
Right.
It's massive amount of coordination to do that.
So how did you hear about what happened to your wife?
I was working at my house, working in my shop, and 2 Blount County cruisers pulled in my driveway, and of course that got my attention.
Yeah, usually never a good sign there.
And so I walked up from my shop to the cars, and the first gentleman to get out had my wife's driver's license.
Oh no!
And that's how they knew where to come.
Okay.
And as soon as I saw that driver's license, I just knew what had happened. And he told me that she had had an accident and that she had died at the scene.
Oh, that's so hard.
And of course, I got wobbly, weak in the knees, and he sat me down in the front seat of the cruiser for a moment so I could, collect my thoughts. And they told me where she was, where they had taken her, and.
Okay.
I had my oldest son drove me out there to the hospital. This had happened in Loudoun County, so they went to the hospital out in Lenore City.
Gotcha.
And on the way, I called her sister first to let her know what had happened. And of course, that was a major shock, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And then I called friends from church. Just to let them know, this has happened, and of course I'm really not thinking clearly, just trying to gather my wits and figure out what to do.
Right. So you arrive at the hospital.
Mm-hmm. I had to go through the procedure of identifying her. Unfortunately, she, looked good. I'll have to just
okay.
say,
that's what nightmares are made of.
Yes.
Ouch.
Yeah. And shortly thereafter, people from my church just started arriving. A lot of people just started arriving, and they were there with me in the hospital. My pastor, my music minister, friends. It was a crowd of people, which I didn't expect that.
Sure.
And in the moment, what I remember is I kept saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, because I'm thinking I don't know what to do.
Well, who would?
Yeah.
That's not in the script.
Yeah.
That's not, you don't plan for that.
Yeah. And part of that was that we were preparing to leave on this choir tour in the morning, and I'm thinking in my head, I can't go. I can't
Sure.
do that.
No, you can't.
And how can I can't leave at this time. And my music minister took me aside and said that we have collectively decided to postpone choir tour for a week. Which I honestly...
how do you do that?
Yeah, I couldn't believe that because all this, it takes a year to plan.
Yeah.
And all the people's vacations and bookings and hotels.
And where everybody was staying, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
all of those,
my.
the massive amount of details that are required to move 100 people and make this thing work. And
Is that what happened?
That's what happened.
Good grief. How incredible.
And he told me we have people back at the church. We have a bunch of people came in and are calling all the families to let them know this is what's happened and we're going to postpone this for a week. And of those, you're talking 65 kids, 35 adults, all these families, of that whole group, there was one person that could not move his vacation out of all those adults.
Oh, my word.
And that was not that the company wouldn't let him. It's just that, they couldn't
didn't work
rearrange.
out.
Didn't work out.
Yeah.
And one other person actually quit his job. He said,
In order to go.
In order to go.
Golly. Wow. So obviously you have a church who stands behind you when something difficult happens. How has that been? In the days, months, weeks after that?
I honestly don't know how people cope with something like this without support from a church.
Agreed.
To have that church family surround you immediately from that moment, that evening, and then we went home, and went home with my boys that night. People started showing up in the morning, just unannounced. Youth pastor, some of the women. We were in a small group. We had 5 married couples were in a small group.
Okay.
2 of those women from that group came and just started cleaning my house.
Oh my!
And it's not that it was messy or anything.
It's just something you're not going to deal with right then and there.
And they're just trying to take care of things.
That's awesome. Things that you don't think to ask somebody to do.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And they immediately Sunday school classes started schedules where they would bring us meals. On this day, that day, everybody knew the schedule, and the food just started showing up.
Wow. And that's just what churches do.
That's what they do.
I mean, people can say what they want. People who are outside of a church, they look in and go, a bunch of hypocrites. But there's a family there, and you're bonded by Christ.
Absolutely.
And people just start helping, and that's so amazing. What I want to talk about in a minute is not only your faith journey, but things that you had to deal with above and beyond the pain of the loss. But there was a lot of confusion that you are now trying to help other people figure out.
That's right.
And I think it's amazing. So we'll do that in a minute. Roger Schmidt with us. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, and we'll be back in just a minute.
When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. 'Cause when you call my name, shouting, I ran out of that grave. God put a million doors in the world for his love to walk through. One of those doors is you.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. Really glad to have you along. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, and we've been talking with Roger Schmidt, who is the owner of Fusion Backline, a wonderful company that you run yourself with help from people that you hire, and provide instruments, provide what they call backline for live events all around this area, from small events to very, very large events, and I think that's wonderful. But we just talked about, just a few minutes ago, about a tragic loss, a very unexpected accident, and you lost your wife in a car accident, and the difficulty you had of that day, and how your church helped you. But what I want to talk about because I know there are people who are dealing with loss and dealing with sadness and dealing with difficult issues, is how do you do this? I don't understand how people would do this without faith. Faith was a very important thing through your healing process.
Well, immediately I saw God's hand in the people that surrounded me from my church. Just like we talked about, doing things that I wouldn't even, it didn't cross my mind. They wanted to take care of me.
Sure.
And that whole week, I met with my small group, and they helped me plan. I don't even want to call it a funeral. It was a celebration
Right.
of her life, and all the way it all unfolded, and we were able to get most of her family came up from Florida for the service, and some of them were unchurched, and they saw this family that I was involved with, and it affected their lives as well.
Wow.
But I just saw God's hand in things happening around me. There were 3 different people in cars that actually stopped to help her. They either saw or came upon the accident.
Okay.
And that's where I really saw God's hand in what I call events that are beyond coincidence.
Okay. I love that phrase.
I hadn't been out to the crash site, and when Sandy's sister came up from Florida, she wanted to go out there, and we didn't know where it was exactly.
Okay.
Didn't have a police report or any of that sort of thing. So I said, well, we'll just drive out 321 and we'll find it. Well, I stopped at a place that sells stone for doing outdoor things at your house, and
Right.
paving bricks and all. I just stopped in. There was a lady on a lawnmower at the house next door, and I said, "This is what happened. My wife died in this car accident. Can you help me? Help me find where it was?" And she says, "You're not going to believe this. My sister is a nurse at Blunt Memorial Hospital. She was on her way to work, and she stopped to help, to assist."
Okay.
And if I hadn't been there at that moment, if I hadn't stopped at that house, if she hadn't been on the lawnmower, I would have never known that particular person. And I got to speak with her on the phone later about it. So she told me she knew exactly where it had happened, and she was able to take us back there to that place.
Goodness.
Another fellow that stopped was an EMT in the military. He had just finished his leave and was headed toward the interstate, toward Lenore City, to drive back to Texas and go back to his job in the military. Well, so I had a nurse and an EMT.
So you were you knew that she was in good hands through that process. And that's just, to me, another example of even in the freshest part of your difficult journey, you were already seeing blessings.
Absolutely.
And God's just that way. I mean, yes, that's difficult and that's terribly sad. But if you keep your eyes open just enough to say, "God, I know you're there, and I know you can offer me blessings."
Absolutely. I knew she was in good hands. And I knew people were with her.
And you just happened on one.
Yeah.
just right then. And that's amazing. Well, and another thing I want to talk about, and I imagine you have 1,000 stories about blessings like that, but one thing that you are really trying to help people with is what you experienced after the initial shock, and the initial was a big mess.
Yes, and I'm finding this to be all too common with married couples. We had not prepared for this. How you don't want to talk about losing your spouse.
No.
So she had no will. At the time, I had no will. Back then, she was much more, I would say, computer savvy than I. She did all of her banking and all of her that sort of thing online. and I was a paper guy, and we
So you did it separately.
did it separately.
Okay.
And so all I have is, I don't have any paper trail on how to take care of her affairs, how to close her accounts. I literally just had to get out like a credit card and call the 800 number on the back of the card and say, my wife has died. Well, these days, they immediately think it's fraud.
Sure. And sometimes it is.
And sometimes it is.
Right.
So I had companies initially just hang up on me, not believing that this is what happened. And
because they may have heard a similar story
Certainly.
that's not true.
certainly,
Oh,
and
my.
just dealing with the, her health insurance, all sorts of things. Now the company she worked for did come in and help me with a lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah, but something tells me your name was not on her accounts.
That's correct. And
which can cause a major problem.
it took me about a year to sort through everything and take care of all of those type of things, just to be able to have some finality, closure, just to take care of her affairs.
So were you getting like phone calls, why isn't this being paid?
Yes.
So you were getting those
Those kind of things as well. And I had to send out death certificates. I had to prove that this happened. I'd have to mail death certificates to certain companies
Right.
and organizations.
Right.
Because they didn't believe me either when they called.
So not only did you have to deal with losing her, but you had to deal with all these different companies saying, "Where's my money?" or "I don't believe you," or hanging up on you. Yeah. So what advice would you give somebody to not have this happen?
Well, I believe that there's a ministry here that really needs to take place, and not just in churches, but it's a good place to start, is to have couples come in and say, you need a book, you need something somewhere where, or I list all of my accounts. Here's my passwords to this. Here's a lot of people. Here's the password to my phone. Now with smartphones, you might not necessarily even be able to get into the phone,
and a phone company will not help you,
and they won't do it. So not only the big needs of having a will and having a living will and having DNR and all these things in place.
Yeah. But how do I get into your account?
Yeah.
Right? How if I had to, how would I do? Oh man.
How do I manage
that?
that?
That's complicated. Very fast.
Yeah. So that needs to be in place. You need to have a frank conversation and say, we're going to share this information. We're going to have a central place where all this data can be gotten to immediately.
Of course, your spouse's first words are, "Do you know something I don't?"
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's just planning ahead.
It's just planning. But what it also leads to, and I think that's where the ministry comes in, if you have that transparency in that small administrative part of your marriage, I feel like it will work its way over into other parts of the marriage and develop more of an intimacy between you and your spouse. If you're that transparent,
connected.
your connection.
Yeah.
If you're that transparent with these sort of things, that it will travel into other areas of intimacy, and I mean that in just speaking and
it's a closeness.
The closeness.
Yeah, and even though there's a mutual trust, now there's more of a mutual trust. That's big. That's really big, and I'm sure that there's so many people around, especially with this digital age, who are completely unprepared.
That's where it has become much more complicated than it used to be.
Yeah, because it firewalls is not only something that protects you from fire, but it also protects other people from getting in there.
That's right.
But if you really need to get in there and can't, that's a problem.
It is.
Wow. So this kind of issue can not only be difficult to deal with as far as creditors and banks and whatnot, but it can get difficult in the legal part as well.
Yes, it can. Because of what happened to me, I've had the opportunity to speak with other people that have been in this type of situation.
Sure. That's another one of the blessings.
Yes, and I didn't know that state laws vary. You know, these are not federal laws that pertain to property, and once you're married, how you know, what's yours is mine, and mine is
Right.
and the state laws vary, and I've spoken with people that have had difficulty dealing with a different state. If you moved here, for instance, but you were from somewhere else, those laws from the other state can come into play.
If you don't have a will.
If you don't have a will and don't have all of this administrative.
So like what?
Unfortunately, children of say you both remarried and you each have children. Things can the children want to get in there and start dividing up.
I want this. I want that.
Yeah.
No.
And it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And you're already in a situation of mourning, and then you have to deal with that sort of
people fighting. Oh goodness, that can really get complicated really quick. So, I'm thinking maybe a will's a good idea.
I'm thinking that it's really one of the cornerstones of having these affairs in order, to have that will in place to not only say maybe who gets what, but to designate who is going to be the overseer of this legally.
Right. Okay. So who ultimately makes the decision?
Yeah.
If you don't have a will, that's not even set.
It's not set, and it just that it makes everything else. It's sort of a domino effect throughout the rest of the world of paperwork.
Well, Roger, thank you for that. And it's difficult to look at it from that perspective, but for somebody that's been there, that's helpful information. Mm-hmm. We have just a little bit of time left here in a second to talk to wrap things up and to get a little more faith perspective from you. So hang around. We'll talk again in just a minute. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker.
If you got pain, he's a pain taker. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, a book about life, trust, and worry through the eyes of a dog. We've been talking with Roger Schmidt, who is the owner of Fusion Backline here in Knoxville. They provide musical instruments, drums, guitar amps, keyboards, and whatnot for bands who are traveling through. They usually show up after flying in with their guitars and drumsticks, and you provide pretty much everything else. That's very specified. You got to be a real connoisseur to help these bands get the things that they actually want. Mm-hmm. We've also been talking about a very difficult thing that happened in your life. You lost your wife in a tragic car accident. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about some of the healing. And that through the first week where your church really, really stepped in and provided comfort and whatnot. But there are other things that happened with you that God really showed you His strength and His putting His arm around you and saying, it's okay. Tell me a little bit about what you experienced.
The next summer, I went on a mission trip to Zimbabwe. It was organized by our church. They got together tradespeople, people and carpenters, and people that had skills in order to finish up an orphanage that they were building over there. And I was reluctant, but the best thing to do when you're in a situation where you've had a loss, you really need to put yourself aside and go do something for somebody else. And
absolutely. That is healing 101.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
after a time of mourning.
Yeah. But that's the way I when I think about it, you put yourself aside is the way I would term that.
So hard to do, but you can.
And you can. And it was very healing for me to go out and do something to give back. And you don't have to go all the way to Africa. It just happened to be in this situation that's what occurred.
Sure.
But a moment that really was a defining moment for me in my recovering and my mourning process, which is different for everybody, different length, takes different steps. We were bouncing across Zimbabwe in a safari truck, and the roads in Zimbabwe are horrible. They're just...
It wasn't a Cadillac?
No.
Oh, okay.
Potholes, and they're not maintained like they are here. And these safari trucks they don't have great suspension. I mean,
right.
you feel like you've been in an earthquake as you're riding.
Oh, goodness.
But we're going cross country in that safari truck, and I'm reading a book that was actually given to me by one of the other team members. It was called Heaven is for Real, and it's about
I love that book.
About a young boy that dies and is brought back in the hospital, and then tells this story about what he saw. And as I'm reading that book, I suddenly had this moment where the phrase is cliche, but it is real. I had a peace that passes all understanding. Suddenly in this rattly, shaky environment, I was just absolutely enveloped by God, by the love of God, by the hands of God.
Wow.
And I was assured that Sandy was in heaven and was fine. And that moment just was a defining moment.
It was a page turn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. And so you understood that even though a completely devastating thing happened, that God's still there.
Absolutely.
And he can hold your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And you helped yourself by helping others,
mm-hmm.
but you saw it. You saw that peace that he offers, even in the worst of circumstances.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow. And that's so important for people to understand, is it may not happen instantly, because God understands that you got to mourn and you got to heal. And like you said, everybody does it differently. But if we open our eyes enough to see his ultimate and incredible glory, it's there.
It's there.
And you find it in the most odd of circumstances, but oh, wow. Roger, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, for being available and open to talk about this difficult part of your life. But what a transforming thing for you and other people who have listened, and also a learning experience through dealing with some of the mess and the aftermath. And I'm so glad that you smile. You've gotten remarried?
Yes, we will have our second wedding anniversary in about 2 weeks. And Charlotte is a widow also, and that's why I believe that the Lord put us together, because I understood her, she understood me, and I was able to be her counselor when we first met.
Wow.
And to help in her healing process and her mourning process, and we
God strikes again.
Yeah. we have another chance at for both of us to have a fulfilling life and to be
find
happy.
joy. Absolutely. Joy. Praise God. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And I wish you all the blessings to your job, to your marriage, to your family life. This is Dealing with Life. I hope you found some peace in this conversation today. I hope you found joy, and I hope you found hope and the glory of God, because it's truly, truly there. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. We do this every single week. It's a show called Dealing with Life. I pray that you are able to find the beautiful grace of God, His transforming strength, the forgiveness that Jesus offers, the hope that is in His name alone. I pray you find it, you believe it, you use it, and you smile.
You speak